My mother thinks she can replace my father with that strange boyfriend of hers and make me call him Dad, but she has no idea I've been secretly keeping in touch with my real father. My name is Emma, and when I was 13, my mother, Dana, got engaged to a man named Vince. My father, Sam, had been convicted of manslaughter just 5 months earlier. That night, he just went to call someone at a bar. He hadn't even been drinking. I was with him. He went into the restroom and a few minutes later came out with a terrified look, his shirt stained with blood. He shouted for someone to call the police. They arrived quickly, didn't ask many questions, and immediately handcuffed him and led him away. The next time I saw him was through the glass at the prison. Nothing made sense then. Sam had never been violent. He had always been patient, gentle, never raised his voice. He swore he was innocent. But what made me start to truly doubt things was how my mother behaved after he was arrested. Less than a week later, Vince moved into our home. From day one, my mom declared, "Vince is your new father because the old one is clearly a monster." She told me Sam was a murderer, that I needed to cut off contact with him to protect myself. I was confused at first, unsure who to believe, but just 5 months later, when my mother announced their engagement and demanded that I start calling him Daddy, everything started to become clear. I began leaning toward believing Sam was the victim, and at that same time, things started to take a much darker turn. Vince grew increasingly comfortable with me. He would stare at me during dinner and, chewing casually, say things like, "You're growing up fast, a beautiful young woman." The terrifying thing was, my mother thought that was a sign of a man who loves his family. The first time I told her Vince made me feel disgusting, she said I was overdramatic. But she must have told him, because that night, while she was asleep, Vince sneaked into my room, grabbed my wrist, and hissed, "You know what happens to snitches." I was paralyzed with fear, but I also realized I could no longer rely on my mother. Since that night, I couldn't sleep. Every time he walked down the hall and the wooden floor creaked, I held my breath. His eyes felt like they were always watching. Worst of all, my mother, Dana, didn't suspect anything. She always made excuses for his creepy behavior, saying it was just him learning how to be a father. "She's a teenager. Vince is just figuring out how to be a dad," she'd say, smiling as if it were sweet. I knew I couldn't trust my mom. And around then, I started hiding another secret. I began writing letters to my father, Sam, slipping them between my textbook pages, and asking my best friend to mail them from his house after school. My father couldn't write by hand, but he used the prison's email system to write me back via an account I had created and hidden from my mother. We exchanged messages weekly. The more letters we shared, the more convinced I became of his innocence, especially when something horrible happened one Thursday night. I came home from school to find my name changed on my report cards, from Emma Sanders to Emma Carlton, Vince's last name. No one asked me. My mother merely smiled, handed me a printed copy, and said, "You'll thank me someday." That night, Vince walked into my room without knocking, sat on my bed, placed his hand on my thigh, and said, "You should be grateful to have a dad who cares about you." I shoved him away and ran to the bathroom, locking myself in until he left. I told my father everything in an email. A week later, I received my first handwritten letter from him, something unusual. The ink was smudged and the paper damp in places, nearly translucent. I knew he had cried while writing it. I kept that letter folded under my pillow, a kind of protective talisman. But no talisman is strong enough. A week after that, Mom discovered the stack of letters I had hidden. I don't know how, maybe while cleaning my room, she brought them all outside and burned them. I watched through the window as the smoke rose, like my father's final words, evaporating. "That's the price for contacting a murderer," she said. Then she tore the door off my room and said I didn't deserve privacy if I couldn't respect boundaries. I remember that night. Vince stood just outside my door, a few steps away, watching me sleep. Not speaking, not moving, just standing there, silently. And I knew if I didn't do something one day he would step over that line. I didn't know what I was hoping for anymore. Help? Justice? Or simply an adult who would believe me? But the longer I lived in that house, the more certain I became. If I didn't save myself, no one would. I began spending time in the school library after classes, not for the books, but for the computer. There, I could access the secret email I shared with my father. I wrote long, rambling, repetitive emails just to pour out my fear. Sometimes I didn't even know what I was typing anymore. But at least I had a place to speak, a place where I wasn't labeled drama queen. 2 weeks later, I got a reply from Dad. Unlike his usual short emails, this one was long. He told me about his early days in prison, how he felt powerless, how he had to stay calm because of me. Then, at the end of the letter, he wrote something that chilled me to the bone. "Have you checked the place I told you about?" I froze. Checked? I reread our old emails. Then I saw, in one from a few weeks ago, one I had skimmed over too quickly in my heartbreak when Mom refused to let me visit him. My father had written, "When you're ready, go up to the attic behind the old furnace. I left something there before I was taken." Zrenia, Emma. That night, I stayed up waiting until Dana and Vince left for their usual date night. Every Saturday, they'd go out and always come back late, tipsy from a few drinks. I climbed up to the attic on the creaky wooden ladder, flashlight trembling in my hand. The ceiling groaned under my steps. I made my way behind the old, dusty furnace, and behind a loose wooden panel, I found a tightly wrapped plastic bag. My heart pounded in my ears as I pulled it out. Inside was a thick, worn leather journal, pages marked with slips of paper. I flipped to the flagged page and saw my dad's handwriting, a little shaky, but his. It's been weeks since I saw Dana and Vince sneaking out of the bar. I don't know how to confront it. I sank to the cold wooden floor, feeling like I'd been yanked out of reality. Dad knew, long before he was arrested. It wasn't just a vague suspicion, he saw it. And just as I processed that, I heard a car pulling into the driveway below. The engine stopped right in front of the house. My heart dropped. I heard the car doors slam, my mother's high heels clicking steadily along the stone path, and Vince's heavier, dragging footsteps. Maybe they argued, or the restaurant was too crowded. Whatever it was, they were home early. Not even an hour had passed. I shoved the journal under my sweater, its cold leather pressing against my stomach. I curled up behind a stack of old boxes, holding my breath as my mom's fake laughter floated up from below. Then came the sound of the creaky stairs. Someone was coming up. I rushed to the attic hatch, but before I could reach the ladder, Vince's face appeared through the opening. I froze. The flashlight beam hit him square in the face. He squinted but didn't react right away. He just stared at me like he was trying to read my thoughts. Then he started climbing up, one step at a time, his broad shoulders barely fitting through the frame. I backed up until my back hit the wall, sweat gathering in my palm as I clutched the journal under my shirt. "What are you doing up here?" he asked, not loudly, but with sharp suspicion. I tried to keep calm, glancing around like I was looking for a reason. "Looking for old stuffed animals," I said. "I haven't been sleeping well. Thought maybe finding my childhood teddy bear would help." He didn't move. His eyes swept across the dusty attic, stopping at the boxes I had shifted to reach the journal. I saw his hands clench into fists, then relax, then clench again. "You're a liar, just like your father," he said flatly. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Suddenly, he lunged, grabbing my arm and yanking me toward the ladder. I had to hold the journal tightly inside my sweater to keep it from slipping out. By the time we reached the bottom floor, my mother was standing there, arms crossed, her face unreadable. "What were you doing up there, sneaking around like a thief in your own house?" she asked, not angry, just annoyed, like I'd ruined their peaceful evening. Vince let go of my arm, but I could still feel the grip like a bruise. "She's hiding something," he said. "We should check her room." I panicked, stammering. I just couldn't sleep. I wanted my teddy bear, that's all." My mom sighed like she was exhausted. "Let it go, Vince. I'm tired. We can check tomorrow." That night, I stuffed the journal into my pillowcase, lay on my side, feeling the sharp edges pressing into my cheek. But I couldn't read more, not when every hour Vince stood in my open doorway, where the door used to be, watching me sleep in the dark. The next morning was Sunday. My mom made pancakes like nothing had happened, humming along to a country song playing on the radio. Her calmness made me sick. Vince sat across from me, eyes glued to every movement I made as I poked at the food on my plate. I couldn't eat a bite. I excused myself to use the bathroom, carrying the journal wrapped in the plastic bag. Inside, I rummaged under the sink and found a small Ziploc bag. I carefully rewrapped the journal and hid it in the toilet tank. The cold water numbed my hands, but at least it was safer there than under my pillow. Monday came. During lunch, I slipped into the computer room in the school library. It was nearly empty, just the soft hum of the fan and the ticking wall clock. I took out my phone and snapped photos of every page in the journal, hands trembling so much some shots came out blurry. But I didn't stop. Every photo was a piece of evidence I couldn't afford to lose. The entries went back weeks before my dad's arrest, detailing suspicious incidents, Vince loitering around the bar, my mom growing cold, whispering on the phone when she thought no one was listening. One entry described my dad finding a hotel receipt in her wallet from a weekend she claimed she was visiting her mother out of state. Another read, Vince keeps showing up during my night shifts, not ordering anything, just sitting there staring. One time I stepped away for a minute and came back to find him behind the counter, like he was heading to the men's room. I made a fake cloud storage account, uploaded all the photos, then deleted them from my phone, triple-checking to make sure they were gone. Vince had been snooping in my room lately. I knew he was suspicious. Every time I came home, my drawers were out of place, my closet looked disturbed. One day, I found him sitting on my bed, holding the necklace my mom gave me for my 12th birthday. When I asked what he was doing, he smiled. Helping you clean up. Your room's a mess. Then he narrowed his eyes at me like it was a dare. That night, I heard the front door unlock, Mom coming home from her shift. I thought I was safe, but the moment she stepped inside, she scanned my room like it was a crime scene. Vince stood behind her, arms crossed. "Do you have something to say, Emma?" my mom asked, her voice light but laced with suspicion. I shook my head, trying to keep my face neutral. But inside, I knew I was running out of time. I didn't know who to trust or where to turn for help, until I remembered Uncle Leo. He was my dad Sam's best friend from high school, the kind of person who always showed up when you needed him. He used to visit with homemade barbecue or his toolbox when something broke. After Dad got arrested, my mom banned him from the house, calling him one of those deadweight friends. But I remembered that he never looked at me the way Vince did, and I remembered the smell of butterscotch candy that was always in his coat pocket. I found his number in an old phone book Mom kept hidden in the kitchen drawer, buried under expired coupons and corroded batteries. That day, during gym class, I faked a stomachache and asked to be excused. I ran to the payphone outside the school gate, my hands trembling as I dialed. Each ring pounded like a drumbeat in my chest. "Hello?" Uncle Leo's voice was still raspy, just like I remembered. "Uncle Leo, it's Emma." I expected him to snap at me for calling during work hours, but he paused, then softened immediately. "Emma, are you okay?" I couldn't stop talking. Everything came pouring out. Vince, Mom, the journal, how Dad was still trying to protect me from behind bars. It felt like ripping a stone off my chest that had been crushing me for over a year. He was silent for a long moment, then said, "Can you meet me at the public library after school tomorrow? If your mom asks, tell her it's for a group project. If needed, I'll even back it up with your teacher." And just like that, the next day I saw his red pickup parked in the library lot. He looked older than I remembered, more gray in his hair, deeper lines under his eyes, but his gaze was the same, serious but not cold. I handed him my phone and showed him the photos of the journal. As he flipped through them, his expression shifted from stunned to furious. "I always knew something was off," he muttered. "Your dad wasn't capable of that. But this is bigger than I thought." He asked if I still had the original. I nodded and told him where I'd hidden it. He gave me an approving look. "You did good, but if it's just Sam's notes, they'll say it's speculation. We need real proof, a witness, or video." Then he stopped, eyes narrowing. I remember there was a night guard at the bar the night it happened. Name was Terry. Big guy, kind-hearted. If he's still around, maybe he remembers something. For the first time in ages, I felt a flicker of hope. Faint, but real. I wasn't completely alone anymore. Over the next 2 weeks, Uncle Leo and I met 3 more times at the public library. Each time felt like we were in a spy movie. I changed up my route home, detoured through the market, pretended to stop by a bookstore. Sometimes I told Mom it was study group. Sometimes I used SAT prep as an excuse. Vince started to grow suspicious, maybe because I wasn't as obedient anymore. But Uncle Leo always found ways to deflect when Mom asked questions. He tracked down people who worked at the bar that night. The first was Terry, the night guard. Uncle Leo found him through an old friend at the local security office. Terry still lived in town, retired now, doing odd jobs at a repair shop in the suburbs. I stayed in the car while Uncle Leo went in to talk. When he returned, his face was tense, but hopeful. "Terry remembers," he said. "He told me Vince walked into the bar about 15 minutes before your dad. He saw Vince go straight into the bathroom, and a few minutes later, Sam followed. He thought it was a coincidence. When the cops arrested Sam, he was shocked, but didn't say anything." My eyes widened. "Why not?" "Because of Vince?" Leo said, his tone darkening. "Terry said Vince used to hang around a lot, had friends in the local police, claimed he'd worked security consulting for some departments. Terry was scared he'd get dragged into it." A chill ran down my spine. Vince, this creep who had haunted my life, was more than just a sick man. He had a plan. He had connections. We then found Carolyn, the bartender from that night, a sharp-eyed redhead with a razor-sharp memory. She remembered Vince coming in often, always choosing the seat near the bathroom, nursing a whiskey neat, then leaving quietly. She also recalled him once asking about my dad's work schedule, acting weirdly friendly. But the breakthrough came from Brian, the bar manager. When Uncle Leo asked, Brian frowned. "The cops only took footage from the main camera. But I remember we had just installed a backup system that month. Experimental setup watching the hallway by the bathrooms. That footage was never collected." Both Leo and I held our breath as he pulled out a dusty hard drive from a drawer behind the bar. "It's been here this whole time," he whispered. "I forgot it even existed." We went to his place to view it. Brian sat at an old laptop, fingers tapping nervously like he was opening a treasure chest. Then the screen lit up. That day, 9:47 p.m. Vince walked down the hallway toward the restrooms, casual and carefree. 5 minutes later, at 9:52, Sam appeared. And then, the screen went black. "What is this?" I gasped. Brian frowned. "Hold on. The middle section, it's gone. 3 minutes of footage, missing right at the time of the incident." My head spun. We thought we were close to justice, but the truth was never that simple. I sat frozen in front of Brian's old laptop, my fingers digging into the edge of the chair until they went numb. My eyes locked on the timestamp on the video. 9:55, then it jumped straight to 9:58. 3 minutes. 3 minutes right when everything happened. 3 minutes that could have changed everything for me, for my dad. "This isn't a coincidence," Uncle Leo muttered. Brian scratched his head, trying to explain. "Could be file corruption, or someone tampered with it. But I haven't touched this data since turning over the main footage to the police." "Did anyone else know this system existed?" Leo asked, eyes still locked on the screen. Brian hesitated. "Yeah, Dana, your mom. She used to work for the company that installed this system, Human Resources Department. She was actually the one who recommended the camera vendor to us that year." I turned to look at Uncle Leo. His face darkened instantly. I understood right away. "My mom, Dana." I remembered the late-night phone calls she would hush whenever I walked into the room, the unexplained business meetings. And that moment when she forced me to stop talking to Dad, right after the police announced no additional surveillance footage was available. A chill sliced down my spine. She knew. She didn't just cover it up. She was involved. She erased that footage on purpose. A storm of emotions crashed through me, rage, fear, and a deep, aching sorrow. I used to believe that deep down, she was still my mom, The one who held me after bedtime when Dad worked late. The one who used her bare hands to wash my hair because I was scared of water. Now, I wasn't sure she had ever really been that person. "Are you sure no one knows you're digging into this?" Brian asked nervously. If someone deleted that footage, they might not want anyone reopening the case. I nodded slowly. "I haven't told anyone, just Uncle Leo." Leo placed a firm hand on my shoulder. "Emma, we still have a shot. There might be an original copy somewhere. Big camera companies usually store temporary backups on central servers for 30 to 60 days. If your mom tampered here, she had to know how to do it there too. And that means there's a trail." "Do you know anyone at that company?" I asked, voice tight with hope. He nodded. "An old tech I used to know worked there. Name's Mike. He's freelance now. If anyone can check for backups, it's him." I sat in Leo's truck, clutching my backpack like it held every last ounce of hope I had left. My mother, once someone I trusted, now stood as the person most capable of destroying the truth, if she hadn't already. And Vince, he was still in my house, waiting for me to slip up. Since the day Leo and I discovered the missing footage, everything at home had felt like it was trapped under a suffocating fog. I didn't know if Mom sensed anything, but Vince definitely did. He became more guarded, less talkative, less friendly, but his eyes watched me like a hawk. He started inspecting my room daily, using excuses like cleaning up or airing it out. Once I came home from school and found my desk lamp twisted toward the bed and my laptop screen still glowing even though I'd shut it. He was looking for something, and I was running out of time. Uncle Leo got in touch with Mike, the former technician from the camera company. Mike now freelanced, fixing security systems for small local businesses. He agreed to meet over the weekend at a cafe just outside town, but only if I came alone. The night before the meeting, I couldn't sleep. Vince stood outside my door 3 times, never knocking, never speaking. Just standing there, like a shadow that wouldn't leave. The next morning, I told Mom I had a group session for the state scholarship exam. She nodded, told me to dress warmly and not skip lunch. Vince drove me to school, but I didn't go in. I waited until he turned his car around, then slipped out the back gate and made my way to the cafe where Mike was waiting. He looked about mid-30s, thin, buzz-cut, wearing a gray hoodie pulled up over his head. When he saw me, he simply nodded and pulled out an old hard drive, hooking it up to his laptop. "Central server data is usually backed up automatically every 60 days by default," he whispered. "But if someone deleted it, they'd need an internal login, and those actions leave logs, timestamps, usernames." I nodded, heart pounding as the file list appeared on the screen. Mike scrolled to the date of the incident. There was one backup, but it was flagged. Deleted by user, D.Reed. I froze. Dana Reed, my mother's full name. Mike looked up at me. "I can recover part of it, but it'll take a few hours, and it might not be complete." I nodded, my voice caught in my throat. "Please, do it." That night, I returned home feeling like I was floating through a dream. Mom was on the couch reading a book, Vince in the kitchen, slowly chopping carrots. Each slice of the knife felt like it was scraping against my nerves. I knew from that moment on I had to be extremely careful, because if my mother was willing to erase evidence, she could erase me too. 3 days later, Mike emailed Uncle Leo. The subject line read only, "You'll want to see this." We met at Uncle Leo's cabin, a small wooden house tucked between pine trees on the edge of town. Curtains drawn, phones in airplane mode, locks recently changed. He'd turned the place into a bunker. It felt more like a spy operation than anything else. Mike opened his laptop. The video interface was simple, grainier than the original, but clear enough to make out faces. I held my breath. 9:56 p.m. Vince exited the restroom, face flushed, walking unsteadily like he'd been in a scuffle. His shirt was wrinkled, top 2 buttons undone. Then my dad appeared right behind him. Sam's face tightened the moment he saw Vince. He rushed forward and grabbed his arm. There was no sound, only grainy movement. They struggled for a few seconds. Then Vince shoved Sam back hard and hurried off, glancing over his shoulder as if someone were chasing him. Next, the footage cut to Sam returning to the restroom, then stepping out minutes later, panic written across his face. Exactly as he had always said. He didn't commit the crime, he found the aftermath and tried to get help. Mike paused the video. "That's what I was able to restore," he said. "It's not perfect, but it's enough to reopen the case." I sat there, hands trembling like a low electric current was running through them. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me felt like my body had been split in two, half relief, half bracing for the backlash. Uncle Leo tapped the table. "We need to send this now. But not to the local PD, Vince still has people there. We'll take it directly to the county sheriff's office." As I left Leo's that night, the cold wind slipped under my collar and made me shiver. Everything still felt dark, but now I had a flashlight in my hand. When I got home, I went to my room and pulled shut the makeshift curtain that replaced my door, something my mom called a breathable upgrade. On my bed sat a small box. No name. No note. I opened it. Inside was an old, stuffed bear, just like the one I'd pretended to search for in the attic. But it wasn't mine. I had never owned this bear, and tucked into the back of its neck was a micro camera. I stared at it, my knuckles turning white from how tightly I gripped the box. Vince knew. Or my mom did. Maybe both. The game wasn't over. The final battle was just beginning. I didn't know if I would win, but I knew this much: I wasn't alone anymore, and I was ready.